We're starting on Mark chapter 13. This is the Olivet Discourse. There's only 3 more chapters in this, so it's coming up to the very kind of end of Mark, which is the end of Jesus' life that we'll be seeing. So there's not a whole lot left. 14, 15, and 16 next couple of weeks, and we'll finish up Mark. The chapter 13, verse 1 and 2 says, "Then as he went out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, 'Teacher, see what manner of stones and what buildings are here?' Jesus answered and said to him, 'Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left upon another that shall not be thrown down.'" So, at this time, the temple, Herod rebuilt the temple. Now, Zerubbabel and Ezra, back in the book of Ezra, talks about getting started on rebuilding the temple after they left. Okay, when they were captured by the Babylonians and dragged into Babylonia, Daniel and all the people that was there. There was a few people left, the very poor and some of the outliers around Jerusalem, but not anybody there. The temple was destroyed. They didn't have anything left. So when Zerubbabel come back, when Jeremiah and all those, they wanted to go back and rebuild the temple after the 70 years, they built it up. Well, then Herod came along, and his term was, I don't remember what his date was, it's in here, 19 BC, when he started rebuilding. Herod built a lot of stuff, and he got the money off the backs of the citizens, okay? But he rebuilt the temple. He did that for the people, for the Israelites, to help placate them a little bit for his other buildings that he built. Okay, he built the Herodium, which is a big area down in there. He built Masada around that area. His temple there at Masada, he has a big old place up way high up on a hill. He built up in Caesarea Philippi, or not Caesarea Maritime, which is out on the Mediterranean Sea. He built a big palace. That was his summer palace. So all over Israel, Herod built these. He was the one that really expanded upon what the temple was. It says it was over 1,000 years from Zerubbabel and Ezra when they rebuilt it. It was almost 1,000 years. It was the center for Jewish life, and that was even before that. If you went back to when Solomon built it, up until Zerubbabel. So, and one of the things, Herod expanded the temple. It was nearly 500 yards long, okay? Think of a football field, 100 yards. So 5 times that long and 4 times that wide. It's huge. The temple itself was not very big, okay? But they expanded it greatly on this. Said that the temple was made out of white stones, so that when they looked upon it from across the hill or from far away, it looked like that hill was snowed on, half white. Then on top of that, the temple itself, they actually covered it with gold. So it was gold plated. It said when the sun hit it, it would just brilliantly shine, and you couldn't really see anything that was going around there. And the disciples was making a statement that look at this big rebuilding. Now, you got to understand, these are guys from Galilee. That's like from Jinx, Oklahoma, or wherever, local Yoko, Oklahoma. No disrespect to Jinx, but, from wherever you want to say. And they come to the big city, and they've seen this big temple. Now, they've done that before, because every Jew was supposed to come 3 times a year to Jerusalem, to the temple. But some of them was very poor, and they didn't get to make that. So they came upon, and they were just fascinated by that. Some of the stones were huge. If you look at the individual stones, it says right here, they quarried the blocks, the limestones, 50 feet wide, 25 feet high, and 15 feet deep. Okay? This isn't even 15 feet tall here. It's probably 12 feet tall. So go another 3 feet deep. That's just how deep it was, and deep is this way. 25 feet is probably there.
How did they
A block. That's a good question. A lot of horsepower, a lot of men, a lot of people, and a lot of logs pushing on it and stuff. They actually had, a lot of that seemed to us to be lost. But there is a lot of engineering that goes along with it. They can build cranes and stuff out of it. You just think, how did Noah build the ark? Him and his sons. He had to have help, and I know some of the people they hired, I'm sure, it's not in the Bible, but they had to help cut the trees, first of all, because there wasn't no wood mill that they could go buy anything from. They had to cut the trees and then bring them down and hew them down and get them in something. It's just, to me, a marvelous feat. When somebody builds something today without power tools, they really appreciate how, our forefathers did. Because that's all they had. They just had a wood, an axe, or a mattock.
Remember the limestone we used to lay?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you get one big, $5 rock, stick it in the wall.
Yep.
But I was looking at 25 feet.
That's,
wow.
I mean, I know some of them, they would try to outdo one another putting a rock in the wall. I remember seeing them use one of those little lifts and lift the thing in the wall. It's like, that's huge. That's, you're never going to move that rock. Somebody's not. A tornado might. I'm guessing it's about 20 feet. Not quite 20 feet.
We had a 27-foot ladder, and it'll go up to those lights.
Yeah, so that's
a 20-foot ladder.
20 foot. So another 5 feet on top of that. Yeah, just think of that. And then 50 feet wide. That's more than the width of the church here. That's one stone. That's huge. That's just one stone. So it was, and some of those stones are actually still there. You can see some of them. Okay, not very many, because the Romans completely, when they came and the Jews, when the Romans came and attacked them after the temple, about 70 AD, when Titus came, they saw that they wasn't going to get. They was going to get taken over, so they ran into the temple, because it was the fortress, pretty much, inside of Jerusalem, inside the building. Well, they burnt the thing. It was supposedly a mistake. It's what I read about in Josephus says there. And it tells it right here. The Jews fled the city into the temple because it was the strongest, most secure building. Roman soldiers surrounded it, and one drunken soldier started a fire that soon engulfed the whole building. I don't understand. If it's stone, how in the world is fire going to? But it had to have been some wood, and I know there was curtains and all that around there. But all the gold melted off of the buildings, all the ornate work thing, and it went down in the cracks in the floor. So Titus had everything removed, all the stones removed to get all that gold down. So the temple was completely wiped out. Today, you ask where the temple is, and they'll say, well, it's where the Dome of the Rock is. Okay? But other people will say, no, it's over here. No, it's over here. No, it's over here. They don't know exactly. Now, the Jewish people say they know exactly where it is. And I've heard that it's not on where the Temple of the Dome is. They could build the temple next to the rock, the Dome of the Rock, and still be okay. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they say. So it says, as soon as the army had no more people to kill or plunder, Caesar gave orders that they should demolish the entire city and the temple. This was the end which Jerusalem came to. That's what Josephus says in his works. So the literal fulfillment of this prophecy, and that's what Jesus told them, not one stone is going to be left upon another. Okay, see all this magnificent building? It's not going to be one stone is not going to be left. And they couldn't believe it. It's like, there's no way somebody's going to be able to move that rock. That one, they did. because they had the whole power of Rome behind them. So they moved everything, tore it up, broke it up, whatever, to get rid of it. Not every very last rock, but a majority of it. Supposedly the Western Wall, where they pray now, is still one of those areas that is still the actual wall of Jerusalem that hasn't been, it's damaged, but it's been rebuilt. But it's still, some of the bottom rocks are some of the very ones that were there when Jesus was there.
That's just hard for me to visualize.
I know.
My word.
Brother Epson, read 3 and 4.
Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign when all these things will be fulfilled?"
Okay, as I've said, it's Jerusalem's on this side, the valley's down, and it's back up, and it may be a mile. If you walk that way, it may not even be that far. So they came down and went up after they were looking at the temple. They came down and went back up into Mount of Olives there. And supposedly it's just these 4 is what Mark is telling us. These are the 4, James, John, Andrew, and Peter, the 2 sets of brothers, asked Jesus about when was this going to be? When is the temple going to be destroyed? What is that going to happen? So this is where he talks about and tells them what these signs are going to be. This is the same thing that's repeated in Matthew in the 24th chapter and all those. Luke actually talks about this also. So Mark doesn't really, there's 2 questions there. Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign when all these things come? Mark doesn't say a whole bunch about the first time, but the second time, the second question he does. That's the rest of the chapter. But Luke tells us about the first questions that was asked. So in his work, Mark didn't really record what was said there for them. But we'll get to that in just a minute. Iris, you want to read 5 through 8?
And Jesus answering them began to say, "Take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and will deceive many. But when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be troubled, for such things must happen. But the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be earthquakes in various places, and there will be famines and troubles. These are the beginning of sorrows."
Okay. All of this, it could happen anytime. And we've seen through history, since the time of Jesus till now, there have been periods when these things have happened. There's been famines, there's been wars, there's been earthquakes. And nations are always fighting back and forth one another. But now, there's more happening now of these things, happening in more sequences and in more and more things. People are wondering, they keep trying to say it's climate change on what the earth is happening. And he said, Jesus said, the earth's going to cry out. It is now. It's saying these things. We see weird things happening in the ocean, fishes dying off, all these different weird things. The earth it's time. It's getting ready to be time. It may be another 300 years before Jesus comes. We don't know, okay? Because we don't know the time, but I can't see that because it seems like it's just, it was 10 years is like this. Now it's compressed and it seems like 10 years is almost like this. A day almost.
It says nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. Mm-hmm. Look how the face of nations have changed in our lifetime.
Sure, exactly.
How countries that used to exist no longer exist because they've been taken over by another country. Mm-hmm. And I always thought Constantinople, I thought that was a real cool name. Okay,
yeah.
But see, that doesn't exist anymore.
No.
when you, and as you said, it's just beginning to increase more and more and more.
I've been reading in Revelations,
Uh-huh.
and if more people would my word, they would get on their knees and pray to God.
People just don't understand that it's getting closer all the time. And the rousing up, it goes in here in a little bit. I'm reading the next one, next verse, whatever it is, 9-13 on page 5. But watch out for yourselves, for they will deliver you up to councils, and you will be beaten in the synagogues. You will be brought before rulers and kings for my sake, for a testimony to them. The gospel must first be preached to all nations, but when they arrest you and deliver you up, do not worry beforehand or premeditate what you will speak. But whatever is given you in that hour, speak that, for it is not you who speak, but the Holy Spirit. Now brother will betray brother to death, and a father his child, and children will rise up against parents and cause them to be put to death. And you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but he who endures to the end shall be saved. All these things are happening now. Back when I was a kid, younger and all that stuff, you never heard of kids, back talking to their parents or anything like that. They'd be whacked across the room if they would. And it's just nowadays, it's almost common.
Suing their parents.
Yeah, the school system, the teachers are afraid of the kids because there's no respect of dignity of human, who's the teacher and who's the kid, all this stuff. So he's telling these 4 disciples, now later on we know it reaches to the other disciples, they may be sitting off a little bit further, but it says the gospel must first be preached to all the nations. I don't know exactly what that means. I mean, as far as they have reached a lot of the nations now, but has it been preached? I don't know. Billy Graham's went all over the world. Now his son Franklin's going all over the other pastors, preachers go all over the world. With the internet now, you would think couldn't be anybody in the world, but they still have places on earth that have never been touched. Human people are there, but they're natives. A certain island, I was reading, this one guy was going to try to go talk to them, but they had never had anybody there, and they were trying to protect them because they don't have any disease like we have now, like all this stuff. They said, man, if it got them, it'd wipe them out. And so the people are forbidden to go there. They can't go. It's I think down in South America or somewhere. There are still places that they haven't heard. Now, does that mean every last person? I don't think that. It says nations. But there are a lot of nations there. It talks about the people betraying one another and dying for Christ. They said, I don't know if it's in this one or another commentary. Let's see. Yeah. Well, here's, talks about in China. Okay, let's go to the next page 6. It tells us, if I came from an Orthodox Jewish family and accepted Christ, they might consider me a blasphemer and count me as dead. If I came from a strict Muslim family, I might be rejected by my family and literally killed. If I was a Hindu in India, I could be rejected and martyred. In China, I would be allowed to practice Christianity, but only in a state-sponsored church, or be persecuted. My church might be the one. 1,500 of them were destroyed or shut down since November of 2000. In the Sudan and Africa, I might be killed or enslaved by a Muslim army. In Indonesia, I might be given the choice by Muslims, either convert or die. In Pakistan, I might be jailed by a Muslim government official. And here's the quote, some 165,000 died for their faith in the year 2000. That's 25 years ago. It's more now. I was surprised the other day that some of the guys captured one of the pastors, I don't know the particulars off the top of my head, and I thought, oh my goodness, they wanted people to pray for him and everything because it's a radical group. They released him. I saw that yesterday or today. I'm like, boy, yeah. And it's like that's a answer to prayer right there.
You know, when I was preaching Saturday morning, I preached twice. But I've been teaching on growing as a Christian, and then they wanted me to preach about Easter, the power of the resurrection. So I did my lesson and then I preached. But I got to the part where it talked about persecution, and I began to think it's easy for me to talk about persecution when I'm thinking it would not be. I've seen all these people there sitting on the floor, and I'm thinking it wouldn't be against the government over if they had 2 or 3 people implanted in there.
Yeah.
And if they say one thing about, like, they don't believe in the what is it, their Bible,
Muslim, yeah.
They'll blaspheme against it, and they can be beaten to death.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, that's right here in this world.
That's right. It's not here yet, but I tell you, the people are, I mean, they're like I said, the crazy people are coming out of the woodwork, seem like. And it don't take anything to set them off for some reason. I don't know why. But he tells us, he who endures to the end will be saved. So we don't know what, it's saying that it's coming. Even that end, it's still not yet there. With all this happening, it's still not there. So Brother Epson, 14.
So when you see the abomination of the desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet standing where it ought to be, not to be.
Yeah. And that's just the first part of it. Now this is a little, people get confused with this because this is in the tribulation period. Okay? Jesus has already come for the rapture, in my opinion. The pre-trib. So before the rapture happens, when the rapture happens, he takes us out. This abomination of desolation, it's talked about in Daniel. That's when they're going to take and somehow, we don't know what it'll be, but they will take the temple that the Jews have rebuilt and got started on, and they will defile it some way. Either by offering a pig on it, because they did that in one place. The pig to them is unclean, to the Jewish people and the Muslims. And also, they may put a statue there, an idol, a vulgar idol there. Whatever that is, they put that in place where the Ark of the Covenant is, in the holiest of holies. When that happens, okay, that's where they think, then from then on, it's 3.5 years. How many days that is? 1,600, 1,270, I think it is. That will be when Jesus comes back. So that's when he's telling them, that's when he's going to come back and step down on earth. When he comes for the rapture, he's not going to be on the earth. We're going to go up to meet him in the air. It says the word abomination appears in the Old Testament 29 times. It has the idea of a filthy, disgusting idol. However, it is more than just an idol. First, it is an idol set in the holy place of the temple in Jerusalem, standing where it ought not. Matthew tells us it's standing in the holy place. Second, it's the filthy, disgusting idol that brings desolation, the complete, devastating judgment of God. Okay, when that happens, that's when the great tribulation starts. Up until that time, it's a tribulation.
Well, I was just thinking of that deal they did, what was it, the Super Bowl or whatever?
Yeah.
When they made fun of the Passover feast.
Right.
And how
the Olympics, yeah.
You know, some people were just amazed. I mean, really disgusted. And I was listening to one young man, and he was raised in church, okay? And he was saying, "Oh, and you guys get excited because it's just art." And I'm thinking, all that's doing is opening a place. It's like the pandemic. I would have never thought that we would give up so easy
Right.
to start wearing masks and not quit having services and all that stuff. Like you said, all that stuff is
Just set you up for it.
intensifying.
Yeah. It desensitizes us to what we should be doing. And we keep hearing it, seeing it. That's what, anymore. I listen and a person will tell me that, hey, you need to watch this movie. It's really good. And I said, well, does it have any language in it? Well, I don't know. I don't think so. And then you go watch it, and the first 10 seconds, blankety blank, 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 movie. And I'm like, well, that's a really blankety blank good movie. I said, after about 5 minutes, I'm like, nope, not for me. I'm not watching that. That's crazy. People just don't understand that.
But Janet Jackson, how that, okay, she just wrote herself. Okay, they threw all these trouble, but what they do is, they
just keep
move
pushing
back, but they don't.
Right.
I mean, they try to rectify it, but if they were here, then they were over here.
They
in the middle.
They really want it, but they got to act like they don't want it.
Yeah, right.
In order to keep track of everything. So there's a lot in there talking about the abomination of desolation. There's 2 pages if you want to read it. You can get more than I know about it. But go over to page 10 and we'll read the rest of that chapter, Iris. The rest of that verse, 14 through 18.
Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down into the house, nor enter to take anything out of his house. And let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days, and pray that your flight may not be in winter.
Okay.
So that guy in the field not have his clothes on.
Well, yeah, you got to have. If you're in the winter, you sure don't want. Now it talks about fleeing to the mountains. There's mountains both north. You go north, and there's Mount Hermon and a bunch of those from Jerusalem, or you can go south, and those are kind of like out here in the Panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas. They're big plateaus out there. Jordan and all those, they have their mountains, and you can get down. Petra is one of the places that they think that people will run to because it's considered safe. It'd be really hard to hit because you're between 2 great chasms, it's kind of like in the Grand Canyon, only it's not that wide. It's deep, and they have a bunch of rocks built into the rocks, so people built cities inside the rock there. Beautiful if you haven't ever seen any pictures of it. But in the side of the sandstone, they carved out, looks like a building, and inside you go in, they carved all the inside of it out and everything. It's just beautiful. But that's what they're talking about. And it's, of course, anytime you go into the winter, it's going to be a lot colder. So you don't want to be out without a coat. He's saying, hopefully it doesn't happen to him. Because he's telling them, get out of Dodge now. Whenever you hear this happening, you need to head to the hills. Basically, if you want to put it in our vernacular, get out of town because it's going to just get worse.
Now this is the Jews.
This is the Jews. He's talking to the
Church.
Jewish people.
The
Church is gone. Church is gone. And the people have been raptured. Now there will still be people after the rapture that's going to be not Jews. Okay, there'll be people saved, I believe, in that time period. So those people may be going there too, because they're seeing what the people. But from the time whenever the rapture happens, the age of grace is gone, and then it starts the age of the Jews again. That's 7 years. That's the last 7 years that Daniel said. The last 7 weeks of his 490 weeks that he said was going to happen. Okay. Let's see. It says these words of Jesus have led some to believe that everything Jesus spoke of here was fulfilled in the 1st century. Rome actually, like I said, they destroyed the temple in 70 AD. Jesus also said that these events would bring in the Great Tribulation, and those days would culminate in the triumphant return of Jesus. Since we're still here 2,000 years ago, we know that that wasn't the abomination. What Titus did and some of the others did earlier on was not the abomination of desolation, because we are still here. Said this has led some to believe that all Christians, the church as a whole, will go through this time known as the Great Tribulation. And this warning must be for us. However, Jesus promised to catch his people up from the earth and meet them in the air. Okay, that's the rapture. And what Paul talks about in Thessalonians. So he told us to pray that we would be counted worthy to escape this time. A lot of people say that's escapism, that we're not going to have to go through that time of enduring. Well, it's enduring now. I mean, it's starting to happen. In the United States, it's not as bad, but I can guarantee you go up to some of the northern part of the states, up north and northeast especially, they're defying everything. They don't want to do, the West Coast, all up there. They don't want anything to do with God or anything like that. They're still, Trump saying, I'm going to do this if you're anti-Semitic and all this. Harvard has just said we're not going to censor all these people. And he goes, okay, yank your chain real quick, pull all your money. They're calling it free speech. And it's like, no, it's not free speech when you're talking about killing people. That's just the way it is. And it tells us, don't, if you're out in the field working, don't even go back and get your clothes. Just have the clothes that you got on your back. All right, let's go. I think I'm the next one, 19 through 23. For in those days there will be tribulation such as not been since the beginning of the creation, which God created until this time, nor ever shall be. And unless the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, whom he chose, he shortened the days. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is a Christ, or look, he is there, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will rise and show signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. But take heed. See, I have told you all these things beforehand. So, when it talks about the creation, there will be tribulation as the beginning of the creation. You know what had to happen at the beginning of creation? He had to make this earth. Don't know how he did it. I'm thinking like a little kid in a mud pie. Go get a bunch of mud, wrap it together, don't like it, swish it, don't like it, make another one, and then get trees or plants to grow on that and everything, and then the flood happens, all that stuff, water comes up from the depth, and the heavens open up. That's what's happening on Earth today. We're hearing about earthquakes everywhere. They just had one out in California, 5.2, a couple days ago. And they were showing the zoo there at, I think it's San Diego. Had a whole bunch of elephants. And the elephants, once they felt the earthquake, they started running and getting their little babies together to protect them, because the earth was moving and they knew something was coming on. So they was trying to get them to where they knew where they were at. It's just a couple days ago. Yeah, may have been Monday. So these are happening, and they're saying, like I said, it's happening more and more often, and they keep trying to lay it off. Well, the earth is, people think it is a solid ball. It's not. It's a bunch of different plates. The geologic terms are plates that they go together. So when something shifts over here, it's going to shift over here too, and it may shift over here. One thing causes another, and it just kind of keeps shifting. They say the North Pole has actually moved several degrees from where it was just a few years ago, because the Earth has shifted that much away from the sun or towards the sun. I don't remember which way it is. So the Earth is happening. Things are happening in the Earth. That's what he's saying. It's going to get worse and worse. the, the sun, when it starts hissing out those big flares, it'll be more than electronics goes crazy. It'll be burning people to death because those waves will come and hit us. It gets, so hot here sometimes. It'll be crazy. It talks about the tribulation in 1343, the bubonic plague happened, swept across America. 2/3 of the population of Europe was affected. I mean, over 25 million people died out of the population back, almost not quite 1,000 years ago, but 800 or 900 years ago. It could very easily happen, and that's we see if you go through Revelation. There are some things like that that's going to happen. So that's what he's telling us to get ready for. And we don't have to get ready for it. We just have to be ready to go when he's ready to take us. Hopefully we'll miss that. We're not going to miss all of it. I know it's going to, like I said, it's going to happen many times before the time of the rapture, I think, happens. Page 13. Let's go ahead and read that, Brother Epson.
Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains.
Oh, I read that one. Okay.
And in those days there will be tribulation.
I read that one too. Yeah, or she read that one. I read this one. So yeah, we're on page 13.
But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars of heaven will fall, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken.
Mm-hmm.
Then they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And when he will send his angels and gather together his elect from the four winds, from the farthest parts of the earth to the farthest parts of heaven.
So that's going to be at the very end time of the tribulation.
This is the second.
This is the second coming. Yeah. The second coming. The tribulation. This is in the Great Tribulation. Right before Christ comes back. The sun's going to be darkened. The moon will not give its light because it comes from the sun. Even the stars will fall from heaven. It's going to be scary what happens because all that's going to take place, and then the Son of Man will come in the clouds. We don't know what exactly that means. We don't know what his sign is. It tells us in Revelation, but we don't know what that sign is. If it'll be him, it'll be the cross, it'll be angels. We don't know what it'll be.
I think when it said the stars falling from heaven, occasionally we'll have a meteorite, and man, it blows things up when it hits the dirt. I mean, it's hot.
If it's very big, yes, it's just like a sonic, atomic bomb. And we know Revelation tells us at least a couple of them are going to fall. A couple big ones going to wipe out a third of the ocean. One of them is a third of the people on the ocean, the fish in the sea, and all that stuff. Going to burn up all the trees. All these things is going to happen. That's not here, but we tie that in with the revelation that John was given from Jesus while he was on Patmos, and that's what we see. It ties together. This is what he's talking about. We can't understand it. The sun has never not shone. It always comes up. It may be cloudy all the time or whatever for a while, but it always comes back. That people are going to literally freak out before that time comes. Okay, on 14, Iris, you read 28, 31.
Now learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see these things happening, know that it is near at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words
He talks about the fig tree. Huh?
This generation?
Well, I'm going to talk about that in just a minute.
Oh, okay.
The fig tree, let's talk about it a little bit before. He's talking about the parable of the fig tree. Now, just a week or so ago, we talked about the fig tree when he cursed it. Okay? It goes back to that as far as when you see the leaves growing. He said then, he didn't say it, but he cursed it because there wasn't any fruit on it. There should have been fruit. There wasn't. He said, watch the fig tree. He keeps talking about the fig tree. The fig tree is like Israel. It's a type and a shadow of Israel. When they get ready, when that tree, any tree really, but he called it a fig tree, when it gets ready, just like now, the season happens and boom, pollen goes everywhere, they're blooming, and the leaves start coming out. When we see that happening, it says it knows summer is coming. That tree knows that. So then be ready. When you see these things happen, it's almost at the door. And people don't understand that. They'll say, okay, it's been 2,000 years. He said that 2,000 years ago. Was he talking about their generation? He's talking about when you see these things happen. He just talked about that generation will not pass away. Now, if you ask me, is that our generation? I don't know that. Like I said earlier, it may get worse and worse where we can't believe it. And if it's another several hundred years or several tens of years, I don't know. We can't see in our eyes that it gets any worse. But it very well could, and it could take longer than that. I know my dad, he was really wanting to go in the rapture, and different people, I've heard them say that they don't want to die, they want to go in the rapture. Well, that's great, but no one knows when that's going to be. So we don't know exactly. We better be ready for our time whenever it happens. If it happens to happen on the rapture, that's great. But if it doesn't, we need to be ready before that to go at any time. Because like I say, an accident, whatever, could take you right away. So no matter what it is, this generation, a lot of people mistake that. They said, well, that's not true because his generation's been gone. He wasn't talking about that generation.
It also could be that generation that sees the abomination.
Abomination, that's what I'm saying, yeah. Whenever, he just explained all this, and whenever that generation is there, that's the one that's not going to pass away. And that's what we know from what Daniel has told us and what Jesus told John. That time period is a 7-year time period of tribulation. When the abomination happens, that's going to be in the middle of that time period because that's when supposedly the peace is going to be broken. The Antichrist makes a pact with Israel that there's not going to be any war, and that lasts for 3.5 years. And after that 3.5 years, then this Antichrist is going to come out. It's going to get worse and worse through that time. He'll come out against God and all that stuff. And whoever's left from that time on, there's a certain time. We just don't know when that time period starts. And we don't know exactly when the rapture happens to when the tribulation starts. It may be a year, it may be several years. We don't know. We assume that it's going to be pretty quick afterwards, but we don't know. So that's why we have to be careful. We have to be aware of what's going on. Okay, page 15, it's 32 through 37. But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Okay? Underline that, Father. Take heed, watch and pray, for you do not know when the time is. It is like a man going to a faraway country who left his house and gave authority to his servants and to each his work and commanded the doorkeeper to watch. Watch therefore, for you do not know when the master of the house is coming, in the evening, at midnight, at the crowing of the rooster, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping, and what I say to you, I say to all, watch. He's just telling us, a lot of people have problems with that too. Why did Jesus not know when he's God. Why didn't he know when the time is? Well, I don't know. Okay? I don't know that question. A lot of people speculate that he, as a man, what did he always say? We hear him say, I only do what the Father tells me to do. He said that several times through Mark and Matthew. We've seen that. I just do what my Father says to do. As a man, he was limited. Okay? I'm not saying he's limited because he's God. He wasn't limited, but he is under his authority. He is equal with God, but he can't do anything different than what the Father tells him to do.
He didn't argue with him either, did he?
No, he didn't. He pleaded with him, take this cup away from me. But he said, look, lest it be your will, I'll do it. And I used the analogy before that he uses in other places, Jesus uses in other places, it's like the bridegroom. The bridegroom, once he takes his bride, it's different from us. It's kind of like our being engaged. You get engaged. I just heard a couple today say that their son got engaged. But when are they going to get married? Well, I don't know. It's a ways down the road. They have, maybe next year they'll do that. That's kind of like it was in Judea. But then, when they get engaged, it's like they're married. It was back then in Jerusalem. So they're just as good as married. Now, they don't live together. The bride has to go back to her home and get herself ready. The groom has to go to his home. He gets himself ready, gets his house because they're living with his father, his father still. So he goes and builds his little house either next to him or off wherever it is. And who is it that tells him when to go? The father says, okay, your son, you're ready. Go get your bride. And that's what Jesus did. He's waiting now for the Father to tell him, even now in heaven, he's waiting for the Father to say, okay, it's time.
It's just like our government. It's got three branches.
Mm-hmm.
We don't serve three different governments.
No.
It's just one
It's
government.
the same government. Yeah.
And they all have their place.
Mm-hmm.
And then they work together. There's some
Usually.
be good.
Usually.
Be good if they would, but
Yeah.
work together, and each one, the final, when it comes to a single thing, usually the president has that final say.
He's the one that finds, the House has to go through its deal, and the Senate goes through its deal. They compromise and get a bill, and the final signature is the president. And if somebody brings up, I don't like that, what they did, then the judicial gets involved, and they have to review it, see if all that, how that takes place. So that's the three-part, and that's much like the Trinity. They're all parts. Jesus was here for a certain period of time, and before it was just God. Now, Jesus was here spiritually. We see him. He talked with Adam. He was the angel of the Lord. That's what they think. He was that epiphany, whatever they call it, I don't know what they call it, but he was the one there. There are several other times that talks about the angel of the Lord, and they think that was Jesus in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, it was Jesus. He came as a child. He lived. He died. And then he said, I'm going to send you a comforter. That's the third part of the Trinity. He had to leave, and he had to leave before the Holy Spirit could come. I don't understand that, but that's what happened. That's what he did. He said, I can't, he can't come here until I leave. So I don't know how all that transpires, but I know that it's what he told us to do, what he told us that will happen. And the last part of that just says we have to watch. Just like he told the 10 virgins, the parable of the 10 virgins. 5 of them, all of them went there, and they all fell asleep. But some of them at least was prepared because they had extra oil to go into the wedding.
I like that explanation there at the top of the page. That was pretty cool.
On which page?
On page 15.
15. How could Jesus not know that day? Yeah. And now, did not he as God know all things? Jesus did not know this, but it was not because he gave up his omniscience. He is the unchanging God. It was because he voluntarily, in submission to God the Father, restricted his knowledge of this event. And that's what I was trying to say, that because of that, he came as a man. He couldn't do anything more than what the Father told him to do. So, well, that's all this chapter. There's a couple more pages. You can go and read more, finish it out. And it's really, it's a great lesson. And it's so much different than, it's still the same story, but it's told in a different way than Matthew is a little bit. And then we see Mark as we get into, not Mark, Luke as we get into Luke. And of course, John is completely different. So, appreciate everybody coming out.
They missed a good lesson.
Yep.